September 2nd, 1969, 3:30 p.m. Elvis Presley was driving his new Cadillac Eldorado through Memphis when the engine started making a terrible grinding noise. By the time he pulled over, smoke was pouring from under the hood. He was on a side street in a predominantly black neighborhood, miles from his usual mechanics, with a car that clearly wasn't going anywhere without serious repairs. Elvis looked around and spotted a small garage across the street. The hand-painted sign read, "Mitchell's Auto Repair, honest work, fair prices." It wasn't fancy, just a two-bay garage with oil-stained concrete floors and decades of accumulated tools and parts. But it was open, and Elvis needed help. Jerry Mitchell was under a Ford pickup when he heard someone enter the garage. He rolled out from under the truck, wiping his hands on a greasy rag, and froze when he saw who was standing in his shop. Elvis Presley. The Elvis Presley. In his garage. "I don't mean to interrupt," Elvis said, gesturing toward the street, "but my Cadillac just died out there. Any chance you could take a look at it?" Jerry stood up slowly, trying to process what was happening. "Mr. Presley, Yes, sir, of course. Let me get my tools." Jerry pushed Elvis's Cadillac into the garage and popped the hood. The problem was immediately clear. A broken timing belt, probably caused by a manufacturing defect. It would take at least 2 hours to fix, maybe 3. "I can have this ready by closing time," Jerry said. 6 o'clock, maybe 6:30 if I run into complications." Elvis nodded. "That's fine. I'll wait." "You don't have to wait here, Mr. Presley. I can call you when it's done. I'm sure you've got better places to be." "Nah," Elvis said, pulling up an old folding chair. "If you don't mind the company, I'll stay. Watch a real craftsman work." Jerry had no idea what to say to that. Elvis Presley was going to sit in his garage and watch him fix a car. He went to work, trying to ignore the most famous man in America sitting 10 feet away. As Jerry worked, he did what he always did when he was alone in the garage. He sang. Quietly, under his breath, old blues songs he'd grown up hearing. Songs by B.B. King, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf. Singing helped him focus, helped him think through mechanical problems. After about 20 minutes, Jerry was so absorbed in the repair that he forgot Elvis was there. He started singing a bit louder, his rich baritone voice filling the garage as he worked through a complicated section of the timing belt replacement. "That's All Right," Jerry sang, the song that had launched Elvis's career back in 1954. But Jerry sang it differently than Elvis had, with a deeper blues feel, a rawness that came from years of singing for himself rather than for audiences. Elvis sat up straighter in his chair. He'd heard that song performed thousands of times, by himself, by other artists, by fans, but he'd never heard it quite like this. Jerry Mitchell, this mechanic covered in toile and grease and engine oil, was singing it the way it was meant to be sung, raw, emotional, real. When Jerry finished the verse and looked up to grab another tool, he realized Elvis was staring at him. "I'm sorry," Jerry said quickly. "I shouldn't have been singing your song. That was disrespectful." "Disrespectful?" Elvis stood up and walked closer. "Jerry, that was incredible. Where did you learn to sing like that?" Jerry shrugged, embarrassed. "Church, mostly. And just listening to records. My mama used to sing. I've been singing my whole life just for fun." "Just for fun," Elvis repeated, shaking his head in disbelief. "Man, with a voice like that, you should be making records, performing, sharing that gift with the world." Jerry laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. "Mr. Presley, you know how the music business works. White record labels don't want black blues singers unless they're already famous, and the black labels, well, they don't have the money or the connections to promote anyone properly. I'm 40 years old, got 3 kids, own this garage. Music's a nice hobby, but it's not realistic." Elvis was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Sing me something else, not one of my songs, something that's yours, something you'd record if you could." Jerry hesitated, then put down his tools. He stood up, wiped his hands, and sang Crossroad Blues, the Robert Johnson classic. He sang it from memory, with his eyes closed, pouring decades of love for the blues into every note. When he finished, Elvis was smiling. "Jerry, I want to ask you something serious. If you had access to a recording studio, professional equipment, engineers who knew what they were doing, would you make an album?" "That's a big if, Mr. Presley." "Answer the question." "Yes," Jerry said simply. "Yes, I would. I've got maybe 30 songs in my head, Songs I've been singing to myself for years, songs I've written, songs I've adapted. If I could record them properly, share them with people who love blues music, yeah, I'd do that in a heartbeat. Elvis looked around the garage, at the tools and the oil stains and the concrete floors. Then he looked at Jerry, this talented man who'd been hidden away fixing cars when he should have been sharing his voice with the world. "How much space do you need in this garage for actual car repairs?" Elvis asked. Jerry looked confused. "I need both bays for the cars, the office and the storage room in back. I barely use those." "Why?" "Because I'm going to turn that back area into a recording studio. Professional equipment, soundproofing, the works. You'll fix cars during the day, make records at night. How does that sound?" Jerry stared at Elvis, certain he'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" Elvis wasn't joking. 3 days later, he returned to Mitchell's Auto Repair with a sound engineer from RCA Records and an architect. They measured the storage room and office space, discussed what modifications would be needed, calculated costs. Jerry stood in the Iwit Saros, middle of his garage, still not quite believing what was happening. "Mr. Presley, I can't accept this. It's too much. I can't let you spend that kind of money on me." "Jerry, you're not letting me do anything," Elvis said. "I'm doing this because I want to, because I heard something special in your voice, and because the world deserves to hear it too. You've got talent that's been wasted fixing cars. No offense to car repair, which is also important, but music is what you were meant to do. I'm just giving you the opportunity to do it." "But why? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." Elvis looked at Jerry seriously. "When I was starting out, Sam Phillips at Sun Records took a chance on me. Gave me studio time when nobody else thought I was worth recording. If he hadn't done that, I'd probably still be driving a truck. Now I'm successful enough that I can be Sam Phillips for someone else. That someone is you." Over the next 6 weeks, Elvis funded a complete transformation of the back of Jerry's garage. Professional soundproofing, recording equipment, microphones, mixing boards, everything needed to produce high-quality recordings. The best sound engineers in Memphis set it up, teaching Jerry how to use the equipment, how to get the best sound from the space. Elvis paid for all of it. When Jerry tried to insist on paying him back eventually, Elvis refused. This isn't a loan. It's an investment in music, in talent, in making sure good blues doesn't die because talented people can't afford to record it. By November 1969, Mitchell's Auto Repair had a recording studio in the back. Jerry would work on cars from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., then spend evenings recording his music. The setup was perfect. The garage provided steady income to support his family, while the studio allowed him to pursue his passion. Word spread quickly through Memphis's blues community. Other musicians started coming by, wanting to record in Jerry's studio, wanting to collaborate. Jerry welcomed them all, using the space not just for his own music, but as a hub for blues artists who didn't have access to mainstream recording facilities. Elvis would stop by occasionally, sometimes to pick up his Cadillac when it needed maintenance, sometimes just to listen to what Jerry was working on. He never interfered with the creative process, never tried to influence the music. He just listened, encouraged, and occasionally joined in on guitar or vocals. In 1970, Jerry recorded his first album, Grease and Soul, The Blues of Jerry Mitchell. The title was his idea, a reference to his dual life as mechanic and musician. The album was raw, authentic, filled with the kind of blues that came from genuine experience and deep love for the music. Elvis used his connections to get the album distributed, but he did it quietly, not wanting his involvement to overshadow Jerry's music. The album found an audience among serious blues fans, people who appreciated authentic, unpolished blues, performed by someone who'd lived the music rather than just studied it. Over the next 15 years, Jerry Mitchell recorded 7 blues albums in the studio behind his garage. He never became hugely famous or wealthy, but he built a respected reputation in the blues community. His albums won critical acclaim. He performed at blues festivals. He mentored younger musicians. In 1982, Jerry won a Grammy Award for Best Traditional Blues Album for Mississippi to Memphis, The Journey of Jerry Mitchell. When he accepted the award, he thanked Elvis Presley specifically, telling the story of how Elvis had transformed his garage into a studio because he'd heard Jerry singing while fixing a Cadillac. Elvis didn't just give me equipment, Jerry said during his acceptance speech. He gave me permission to take my music seriously, to believe that a 40-year-old mechanic could also be an artist. He saw something in me I didn't see in myself, and he invested in that potential without expecting anything in return. That's not just generosity. That's grace. Elvis, watching the Grammy broadcast from Graceland, cried when he heard Jerry's speech. He'd been dealing with his own struggles: prescription drug addiction, failing health, the exhaustion of endless touring. But seeing Jerry succeed, seeing that his investment had paid off not in money but in art and joy, reminded Elvis why he'd become a performer in the first place: to connect people through music, to help good music find its audience, to use his success to lift others up. Elvis died in 1977, 5 years before Jerry won his Grammy. But Jerry had visited Elvis several times during those final years, had thanked him repeatedly for changing his life, had played his albums for Elvis, and watched the king of rock and roll smile and nod along to the blues. "You did good, Jerry," Elvis had told him during one of their last visits. "You made music that matters. That's all any of us can hope to do." After Elvis's death, Jerry dedicated all his subsequent albums to Elvis Presley, who taught me that generosity means giving people opportunities, not just money. Jerry continued recording and performing until his retirement in 1985. He sold Mitchell's Auto Repair but kept the studio, continuing to make it available to blues musicians who needed a place to record. He never charged much, just enough to cover costs, following Elvis's model of investing in talent rather than profiting from it. In interviews over the years, Jerry was always asked about Elvis, about that day in 1969 when a broken timing belt led to a transformed life. Jerry always told the story the same way, emphasizing Elvis's genuine interest in the music, his lack of condescension, his belief that talent mattered more than race or age or circumstance. "Elvis didn't fix my car," Jerry would say. "I fixed his car. But Elvis fixed my life. He took a 40-year-old black mechanic who sang to himself while working and said, 'You deserve to be heard.' Then he backed. He upped those words with action. He didn't just encourage me to pursue music. He removed the barriers that were preventing me from pursuing it." Jerry Mitchell died in 2008 at age 79. His obituary mentioned his Grammy Award and his 7 blues albums, but it spent the most time on the story of Elvis in the garage-turned-studio, the story that had become legendary in blues circles. The recording studio equipment was donated to a Memphis community center, where it's still used by young musicians learning their craft. A plaque on the wall reads, "This equipment was originally installed by Elvis Presley in 1969 to help blues musician Jerry Mitchell pursue his dream." It is maintained in the spirit of that generosity so that talent and passion can flourish regardless of financial circumstance. The story of the mechanic who fixed Elvis's car and got a recording studio is about more than just one act of generosity. It's about recognition, about seeing value in people others overlook, about understanding that talent exists everywhere, but opportunity doesn't. Elvis could have gotten his car fixed and left, never knowing that the mechanic had an incredible voice. Jerry could have kept quiet, not singing in front of Elvis, missing his chance. But Elvis listened, Jerry sang, and a connection was made that changed Jerry's life. The story also shows Elvis at his best, not the Vegas showman or the movie star or the cultural icon, but simply a person who heard something beautiful and wanted to help it reach the world. He didn't make a big public announcement about helping Jerry. He didn't use it for publicity. He just quietly removed the barriers preventing a talented musician from recording, then stepped back and let Jerry's music speak for itself. For Jerry, the gift wasn't just the equipment or the space, it was the validation, the message that his music mattered, that his talent deserved to be taken seriously. Elvis gave Jerry permission to see himself as an artist, not just a hobbyist. And that psychological shift, that change in self-perception, was as valuable as any physical studio could be. The mechanic who fixed Elvis's car and got a recording studio reminds us that opportunities change lives, that talent needs support to flourish, and that sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is belief in their potential backed by concrete action to help them realize it. Jerry Mitchell fixed Elvis's Cadillac. Elvis fixed Jerry Mitchell's life. And in doing so, Elvis helped preserve and promote authentic blues music, supported an artist who might otherwise have remained unknown, and demonstrated that success is meaningful only when we use it to lift others up. The recording studio in the back of Mitchell's Auto Repair, where grease-stained hands would clean up to hold microphones, where a mechanic would transform into a bluesman every evening, stood as a monument to what's possible when talent meets opportunity, when privilege meets generosity, when someone who has the power to change lives decides to use that power for good.